Today's episode is truly inspiring. Poku is an award-winning social entrepreneur with a passion for levelling the playing field for low-income and ethnic minority groups. He is the founder and chief exec of Babbasa, the first Black-led social enterprise to win the prestigious Queen's Award. And when you listen to this episode, it's pretty evident as to why. This episode is packed with inspiration and empowerment as Poku talks about his experience relating to race, discrimination, class, and relationships. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Poku, welcome to the podcast today. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for inviting us.
Really good to have you here. So first question is, and ultimately one to get to know a bit more about you, the whole person. So could you tell the listeners and me who you are personally, professionally, and emotionally?
That's an interesting way of putting it. I think if I was to wrap that all in one, but maybe tell the story from a more of a chronological perspective, then I will say Poku was a kid born to a family of five siblings, the fourth born. We didn't have much, but we also didn't struggle to have at least one meal a day. I was brought up in a quite heavily faith-influenced environment, the Christian faith-influenced environment. That's my mum also. Growing up, it was funny actually, because I witnessed, obviously, by being brought up in Ghana, West Africa, I witnessed obviously abject poverty. I witnessed high levels of inequality. But the interesting part is that within my own family, my mother's siblings, two siblings, did incredibly well for themselves, so they were very wealthy. But in the same family, I had people who couldn't even afford a meal, maybe for a whole week, and had to be supported. And in Ghana, there is no welfare system necessarily. So I think these contentions really shaped the early, young Poku's life. Fast forward, that Poku, and when I say shape my life in terms of emotionally and how I react and engage with things, but also shape me as a person in terms of what I hold dear, in terms of values and empathizing and being able to be compassionate and being curious as to why things are the way they are.
Yeah.
Fast forward in my teenage, late 20 years, I had the opportunity to come to the UK to study. And I think coming at the back end of the recession also opened almost a new Pandora's box for me, which was one around, actually, I've heard all these things about the UK being a place where some of your survival needs are not even a question. It gets taken care of and you're able to aspire and achieve for your dreams, and it's a wealthy country. So how come there is this much level of inequality that still exists? And actually, how do people rest at night knowing that there is so much wealth, but yet it's not evenly distributed or proportionally distributed, right? And that's because of where I had moved to live. The street just next to me, which was called Stapleton Road, it was known in the country as the most unsafe street to live on. So to me, that was a bit of a surprise. And whilst I came to the UK as a migrant to study, what quickly transpired was that the thing that I was supposed to be studying, which is real estate and property management, which would have been my natural professional pathway, I realized that actually more and more I was beginning to be more interested in how you level up the field for people. Because I have inherently believed that every human being has got something, a skill or a talent, that if given the chance and opportunity to explore, adds value to the society. So why is society locking up, skills and talent for some, and perhaps, or should I say, not opening the doors for some as much as we can all do? So I was beginning to get really interested, and then there came a professional choice, which was to not abandon, but almost pause my pathway of real estate and property management and focus on social enterprise, which at that time was a very new concept. Um, and I wasn't necessarily bought into the concept. I was bought into the view that can I be a force for good? Can I actually, rather than talk about it and be an armchair activist about it, what can I do about it? What can I do to help transform lives whilst also transforming my own life? But the emotional bit attached to that is that that's a difficult decision because first and foremost, one can say, well, if I believe so much in charity, then why am I not looking after myself and my family first before thinking about others? But for me, it wasn't a binary choice. It was being able to look after myself and look after the people around me that I know and didn't know at the same time. But I was trying to do that as a migrant with no money, with no experience in that area of work, with no experience, with no networks, and certainly do it in a space where the color that I wear on my skin often gets discriminated against. And I was already experiencing lots of that. So what's making me think that I'll be able to create an enterprise that can sustain itself, that people will invest in, that can go on to transform the lives of other people. So it was multiple mountains that was ahead of me, but also how do I tell my own family that this effort of coming here to study, I'm going to pause it and I'm going to go do something that perhaps in many people's eyes was unproven as a concept for it to even take care of myself. So, but that's what I felt. I've instinctively felt that this is the path and this is my sense of purpose. And the adversities that will come with it, then it made me feel that it's ultimately worth it for me to go on that journey. But emotionally, it was a difficult one.
Yeah.
Because I was receiving that emotional strain and constraints on a daily basis, whether that is doors being shut on me, whether there's someone saying that, what is it that I'm talking about? Am I trying to be a recruitment company? Am I trying to be a youth center? What is it? I should figure out my life. If it's someone saying to me that, I'm not even from here, so what makes me think that I can do something to support other people? If it's funders rightly saying and investors rightly saying that we don't know about this model and we also don't know about your experience to be able to deliver, so why should we back you? And at times it's even been some families, once we got going a bit, saying that actually, who are you behind this trying to support my son? And I don't want you supporting my son because I don't know you and I don't know where you're coming from with it. And you can say for all of those, some of them you can understand where they're coming from, right? You can't sympathize with it, but you can empathize with where they're coming from. But that didn't nevertheless make it any easier on me as a person, emotionally and professionally. So where am I now, and who is Poku now? Poku now happens to be someone who somehow was stupid enough to stick to it. And 10 years down the line, it is, it has emerged and evolved to be an enterprise that, if I can humbly say, is celebrated across the UK and abroad. An enterprise that is looked at as a model that should be in other cities and other countries, celebrated in many ways through awards and celebrated by the staff, the 22 staff members that we do have, and also celebrated by some of the stakeholders that we do work with, and that range from public sector, from councils to big, banks, right through to corporate organizations that we do work with, which if you were to look back, Poku 10, 15 years ago, I think everybody would have written that out. So that is Poku, and that is a bit of my journey, weaving in the professional, personal, and a bit of the emotional, I guess.
I love that. And it's truly inspiring. I think the most inspirational elements of what you've just said is despite adversity, despite
Yeah.
challenges,
Yeah.
and probably in spite of that sometimes, and actually your personal experiences, be it the discrimination for the colour
Yeah.
of your skin or your experiences that you'd received,
Yeah.
that is what gave you the fire in the belly and,
Yeah.
and the desire to, regardless of anyone else's opinion, to
Yeah.
strive forward
Yeah.
and to make positive change
Yeah.
in areas that you were really, truly passionate about, which
Yeah.
I think is incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
So Babbasa, your company, your organisation, can you talk a little bit about what it does now? Because
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, so Babbasa was set up and is still set up to support, first and foremost, young people from underrepresented backgrounds with their professional ambitions. And the way we work is, on one part, is set up like a youth empowerment program where it moves to find young people, it moves to not just find them, engage them, prepare them, and help them to access career-oriented employments that they wouldn't have otherwise had. So that is one part of it. And these young people often, whether it's by virtue of them coming from a low-income household, whether it's by virtue of them coming from a single-parent household, so there isn't that sufficient support at times for them, or whether they have been discriminated against in a way that they've internalized it so they don't think much about themselves, or whether they've chosen a path for all sorts of reasons, but a path that could be destructive for them and their families, and being able to engage them to say that, hey, we believe that you're a unique individual with unique talents and unique aspirations and challenges. We believe that that's yours. What we are here for as Babbasa is that we want to be like the all-weather runway, where we're saying that you can take off anytime that you want from this runway. We'll support you to take off, but it is your choice, but we will work with you because we believe that you have something greater to offer humanity than perhaps you think, and we even know, but we do believe that you have something greater. So that's that part. And it takes a lot of, we put a price on cultural sensitivities in the engagement. We put a price on the plurality and approach, so treating individuals as individuals when they come through that path of what we do, that service, that youth empowerment service part. The second part of Babbasa operates very much like what people may know businesses to operate, which is it works with the team there, works with businesses, and let businesses know that we can attract talent for them, talent from areas that they wouldn't have otherwise, they wouldn't be able to reach, the talents that they wouldn't have otherwise even thought of. That talent exists there. And what we can bring them is that diversity in talent, diversity of thought, to help add to their business. And many a times for them, depending on our pitch and where they are at, they see it as a no-brainer, because we're saying that not only would we bring them talent, but we also will be there to support them if need be. So it works almost like a recruitment company, like an ethical recruitment company on that side, B2B. But we don't just end there. What we also say is that, look, as a business, it may be that some of these talents, be it where they come from, what they look like, you don't have that as a majority in your company. And we want you to get the best out of them. So we can also provide you with some training, and we can provide you with some consultancy to get the best out of a diverse workforce effectively. So then they buy into that. And the money that we make from that side of the business, we reinvest it back into the youth empowerment side of the organization. So that's how it's set up. The way that it sustains itself, of course, one, like I said, is making money from we call it the recruitment and inclusion side of the business. But then the other ways that the organization make money to sustain itself is that at times we get grant programs, we bid for grant programs, or we bid for contracts, public sector contracts to deliver for the states or for the local authority. So it's a mix model of how we sustain the organization. So that's a bit about Babbasa. The key thing though is not operating for operating's sake.
Yes.
And you touched on the point that, I touched on adversity. Something needs to keep you going.
Yes.
And for me, what keeps me going is the real impact that we're making, not on the individual lives, because we have many of those, but the impact on those individuals, and now what they are also contributing to the ripple effect on their families and their communities. I think that's what, for me, keeps me going. I feel that I'm fulfilling a purpose to be able to transform a life that's beginning to transform other lives.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I think actually the way you talk about the model, I think it's beautiful, because actually it is more than a recruitment agency, right? It's I guess the fact, even the way you talk in terms of that phase one being almost that mentorship, that therapy, you know, it's the positive affirmations, it's the rebuilding of confidence. So actually that person, those people can believe in themselves, and they've got to feel worthy enough in the first place to put their best foot forward.
Absolutely.
And do that. But actually it's bigger than that, isn't it? Because it's the education within the business side of things, in terms of, culturally, how are they supporting that from an inclusion perspective? Are they championing that for the right reasons? Are they well equipped to support those individuals when they do come into the business? So I think the full life cycle and your ability to do that is incredible, and it's I think there's huge gaps right across the UK in terms of how that's being implemented at the moment. But the thing that shines through with that is the heart piece, and I think you say, there's huge purpose in what you do. And I guess my question would be more, how do you keep going? Because equally it's it's fantastic, you give back, and it feels like there's an inherent need, not want, to make a difference and to make a change. So how do you stay, how do you retain that feeling of fulfillment and purpose and continue to strive forward in the way that you do?
This saying has just popped into mind. It says, you need to keep your feet to the ground, your face to the sun, and the shadows will fall behind you. And I think there's something about the feet to the ground, as in reminding yourself, as in, why are you doing this? Why did you start doing this in the first place? And for me, I've got it written out, and it's there, right? Face to the sun. What is the North Star? What's telling me that we're still achieving this? Because it's feeding this, because the two, if you're clear about that, then I guess it feeds the soul. It energizes you,
absolutely.
Right? It's not, it's to a degree, and to be honest, it's not the awards that energizes you. I mean, that is an affirmation, and it may help you get some money or whatever, but what energizes the soul is those two. So long as you're keeping, from me, I'm keeping that in my purview, then I feel like it feeds me. It enables me to rise above almost any adversity.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that the adversity doesn't knock you back.
Absolutely.
But it reminds me that actually is a tunnel. This too shall pass, because what we are aiming for is that North Star of being able to transform individuals, to be able to transform communities. And, we're not trying to boil the ocean, but doing our bits, or doing my bit, or me feeling deep down that I'm doing my bit in that equation is enough for me to thrive. But it's hard, and maybe that is more on the spiritual side. But the body, as we know, can only carry on so much, right? It's infinite in terms of what the body can do. The soul and spirit may be one thing, and you need to take care of that, because that's what carries you around, right? When coming down, I was on LinkedIn, and someone that I know, Nick, who started the wave, today has posted about how he had he had a very major stroke, where he lost his speech and his, not his sight, I think his speech and his movement. For those that don't know the wave, probably good for them to Google it. And actually what he talked about there was that he was neglecting the body that was carrying the spirit to do these things. And actually, to a large degree, most founders tend to neglect the body. But it's the recognition that actually without it, you may not be able to carry on as you want to. So for me, in terms of helping me to move on, I try at least 3 times a week to exercise. And it doesn't matter whether I'm going to the gym or not, but I try to go to the gym. It's doing something that helps the body to be able to retain. But then there's also the mind, isn't it? As in, how do you keep going? I think the idea of lifelong learning, people at times ascribe learning to, going and doing a degree. I mean, to a large degree, that's almost irrelevant, because even going to university is about still learning. And we are fortunate to be living in an information age, a technologically inspired information age, where actually the things that you're learning at uni, if you're that keen, you could be learning it by yourself. You don't need uni to learn that. So also trying to resource myself from that perspective. I'm terrible at reading sort of physical books now, because I'm always on the go. But actually, audiobooks is really powerful for me.
Absolutely, I'm the same.
So that's what I do. So it's recognized that you need to be able to replenish the body, the mind, and the soul at the same time, and not neglecting any of that.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you. I think the self-care element is non-negotiable, right? And it's imperative. And you sort of mentioned it a second ago. I think a lot of founders and business owners and leaders, traditionally the worst for it, right? I think actually you almost have to reach a low to find the high again, and to actually decide that it is a non-negotiable. And self-care is how you become the best version of yourself, and that's how you give back to others. Because if you're operating on a 50, it's not going to work. So it's actually, whether that's exercising, learning, whether that's pressing pause and taking time out, it's really important, isn't it? In terms of your experience with, because you've done some phenomenal things with your organisation, you're consistently giving back. That takes a lot in terms of mind, body, soul, and sort of what you're giving. Have you experienced challenges, I guess, from a personal life perspective when you plough so much into the business? Because I'm sure a lot of listeners will be in that situation where it's a balancing act, right? In terms of how do you give 100% yourself in a personal capacity, home life versus work. Have you encountered any challenges from that perspective? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think there is a price for action, every action, and inaction. And interestingly, there's a saying that when you pray for rain, you should also be prepared to deal with the mud. So consequences you can't avoid. It's how you strike that balance. And I'm a father of 2 kids, 2 young kids. What matters to them is not money or some, a dad who is influential. What matters to them is time. And the time within the day is infinite, right? And if you have such a drive to achieve, to bring a vision to life, at times it feels like a drug. You're so moved by that. But that could be to the detriment of the people you care about the most and love the most. So actually, in many ways I thought I had the balance right in that, I'll see to my girls, I'll make them breakfast, and, at least 3 times in a week I'll read to them, make sure of that. But actually, there was one incident when my now 12-year-olds, I was upstairs, it was a Saturday, and some people had come to the house and said, oh, where is Daddy? And he said, oh, Daddy's at work. And at the time, a partner at the time said, oh, no, Daddy is upstairs. And he said, oh, really? And he said, yeah, it's Saturday. And he said, oh, well, it doesn't matter anyway, because he always feels like he's always working. That broke my heart.
Yeah.
That really broke my heart. I don't think she knows this. But that gave me the perspective that why is she saying that, Because I'm with her in the morning, breakfast, and I'm there. I'm with her before she goes to bed. So why did she say that? But actually, you can be present, but not present.
Absolutely.
And that's what I had to learn. I don't even think that I've got that all 100% not nailed down.
Does anyone?
Yeah, but it's something about being present, even if it's 30 minutes, making it count for the people that you love.
100%.
Because that's what they do remember. And the thought around that. So I think that has always been a challenge, and balancing it out. And making experiences count as well. If you're going to take them out, and make sure their phone is away, and stuff like that. But also, I think there is a cost as well, or there could be a cost to your family relations. I realized that in friendship, I realized that my friends started calling me, "Hey, Obama. Hey, Obama." But actually, I had to take a step back. What do they mean by that?
Yes.
And ask the question, what they mean by, well, you're more busy than Obama, that's why we're calling you Obama. But actually, if that's your support network for hard times, then you do need that. It needs investments. And again, trying to find that balance of investing in the people that are your support network, that will be there to catch you, and investing in the world that you seek, or the world that you hope to create or leave back. It's a tension.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that it's a tension, particularly for founders and people leading in general. But also it could be a tension in life. You could be working, doing your 9 to 5, and the stresses of work at the moment and the complexities of living and challenges at the moment. It's not to be underestimated, regardless of whether you are leading an organization or not nowadays. There's a reason why mental health has become so prominent in the conversations across board. So I think it's just recognizing that those contentions that life is presenting, and being able to create space, adequate space. Because you may never get to sufficient time and sufficient space, but adequate space for the thing that matters the most, being intentional around it.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I think on the flip side of that as well, it's the kindness you offer yourself, because
absolutely,
no one is perfect. Perfection does not exist. It's not a thing. And I think actually the pressure you put upon yourself to be the perfect parent, which there is no perfect parent, but also give back maximum in terms of community contribution, your business, and the juggling act is hard. And I think you've just mentioned being present, and that's maybe lack of technology devices. Sometimes it's in the moment, and I'd agree. I think those nuggets, those moments, mean more to our kids than anything else. But it takes a while to recognise that. But to not beat yourself up as well when actually you feel that you've not been there 100%. That's probably valuable in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think if you're a learner, you want to do better. You're iterative in the way that you do things. Then there's a high tendency to be highly self-critical as well, and almost think that you're a failure at everything or some things. And actually, and that happens. I rather unfortunately I had to separate from my daughter's mum, and I at the core I know that what is ideal, not always, but if you can make it work, is a 2-parent household to balance the energy and the support that's needed by the kids. And so I think I went into almost a grieving phase, and I don't know whether I'm fully out of that grieving phase, but I think through that and saying that, are there things that I could have done differently? And it's recognizing that actually you have to be kind to yourself. Like, it's so key. And the questions that you're asking yourself, or the things that you're beginning to beat yourself up about, would you have done that to your mother or to your best friend, or to, they're not even things that you will say to them or hit them with, but you're hitting yourself with it. So that tells you that actually you're not being kind to yourself, and also not allowing that to cloud the goodness and the joy and the moments that you bring, or the value that you've added to the lives of those people, I think is also very critical. So I absolutely, totally agree with you that being kind to yourself is significantly underestimated.
Yes.
Two things that I tend to now do is when I start to go into that introspective, self-reflective, hitting myself with the bat, is to say, what are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do about it, and what could you do differently about it? Because then that repositions the mind into the future, and how you can take the learning into the future, as opposed to the past, which you can't correct, you can't control anyway.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. And I think actually going back to your point about being present with our kids, when you kind of ask yourself the simplistic questions, what do my children need from me?
Yeah.
There's love, right?
Yeah.
And actually, if they've got two happy parents, regardless of the setup, and they've got love and abundance, then you're doing a great job. And sometimes if you just rein it back in and kind of look at the simplistic value of love and the thing you do best, which is giving back to others and being that role model and offering the unconditional love, then you're winning. And sometimes we lose sight of the important parts, don't we? And so it's good to press pause and kind of remind yourself that you're doing a great job. So I think that's important, isn't it? So you picked up 2 vulnerability cards at the beginning before we come on air. So I'm just going to read you these. If you can go back in time and revisit a younger version of yourself, how far back would you go, and what advice would you give?
How far back would I go? I think first take, what pops into mind is that I go back to the age 19. And I probably will say that trust in your instincts. The brain helps you to analyze and understand the world around you to help you make decisions, to take care of yourself, or provide security for yourself, or take yourself out of harm's way. But so too does the gut. And understanding that actually those two things are not the same. And at times what meets the eye maybe feeding you one response, or maybe trying to get one response out of you, but actually what your gut is telling you is different. And if it's that strong in your gut, then it's probably better to go with your gut. So learning that at an early stage, I think, would have allowed me to navigate some friendships. It would have allowed me to probably get the best version of myself a bit more earlier. So I would say 19. But also I probably would, if I can add this to it as well, I probably would also go back to 28, something like that, when I decided to marry. I probably would say, 26, around mid-20s.
In your 20s, yeah.
And say that take time when it comes to a life partner. The fact that you like someone doesn't necessarily mean that you can live the rest of your life with. Because making that choice around a life partner, be it as a wife or whatever that it is, actually it's a lifelong commitment. And that decision can help you pivot to heights that you never could have imagined, or could actually constrain you to the construct that you hold of yourself, and vice versa. So just take time with that.
I love that. I think it's interesting because on one hand you're saying kind of go with your gut and trust your gut in terms of that feeling, and then the flip side of that is actually sometimes we've got to listen to our heart and not the pragmatic brain side of things that says I'm at a stage in my life where I should be settling down and this is the next phase. It's a huge decision. So actually it's maybe there's different aspects in terms of how we listen to our inner self, be it our gut or our heart or our mind and making those decisions, because fundamentally they do shape the future, don't they?
They do. Incredibly so.
Yeah.
and potentially generations after you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to read you the other card that you picked. So, what are your coping mechanisms when experiencing imposter syndrome or when you find yourself in a state of fear? Has this changed at all over the years?
I think that state of fear at times can manifest in the form of anxiety, can manifest in the form of panic. I think that is in some sense, it's a neurological response, isn't it? Is your instinctive nature telling you that, you know, there could be a danger of some sorts, right? You know, back then, you know, 10,000 years ago, it would be about actually an animal is going to come and eat you up.
Yeah.
Or there's a group of people and they can club you to death.
Yeah.
So that innate response is just, it's recognizing it for what it is. That is just the internal communication, you know, function within you. And with that, it's not going to go anywhere. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. So everybody has it. I have it. I like to think you have
Absolutely.
it. Everybody has it. And as much as, you know, times leaders would like to present themselves in a, you know, have a facade or present themselves in a way that lets them appear confident and decisive and sure, it's not natural, because so long as they're human, we all do have these sort of internal sort of mechanisms. And that manifests as imposter syndrome at times, because, you know, we go into environments that we are new to, or something has changed there, and all of a sudden we feel that, ooh, like, am I supposed to be here? Because again, the response is telling you that the people here have always been here and you are the person that's new here. And whether that's around the board table, whether that's about, you know, ready to present to a group of people. But actually that's not true. You know, I had to learn that whilst the feelings and how I was feeling and still feel, because I was telling you earlier that I'm more of an ambivert, I'm not like an extroverted person, that I need to accept that those are feelings. But actually, I also need to accept that those are human feelings, and actually humans connect with humans. And before I used to hit myself up, I go on stage and I shake, or I treble with voice, or if someone said, oh, you could have projected a bit more, or you could have, I'm thinking, I've done myself a disservice and the people that are looking up to me. But actually, realizing that the people take away the subconscious mind of the people who are listening to you or engaging with you. You need to remember that they take away, their subconscious take away the fact that that's a human being who's trying to do more, who's trying to give more, who's putting themselves out, perhaps in a way that they haven't been able to. They're being vulnerable. They're stepping into their discomfort and they're uncomfortable. And actually, you still connect, even though you think that, oh, you've done a boo-boo. Someone out there think that, oh, I can see myself in you. I can see that you're shaking, and I shake too.
Yes.
And that in itself is powerful. So know that it's okay. It's okay to be anxious in front of the camera. It's okay to not get it right all the time. So long as you're acting in good faith, I think know that you still will be having the same impact one way or the other. And I can give so many examples to that effect. The second part of that question is, how do I...
Yeah, so it was, and has this changed at all over the years?
I think it's like with most things, isn't it? You practice, and then that internal response starts to recognize that actually it's not a wolf coming to bite you. It's not, so it starts to quiet it down. I don't think it goes away. I don't know about you, but you still will be meeting someone and it'll still hit you.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there's an acceptance that it is present, and it's going to show up. And I think when you accept that actually it's part of you, it's part of being a human being, and it's not a negative thing. Yeah. I think that the maybe the bounce back ability and the confidence is better, and I think that grows, but it doesn't stop it from showing up. And I think it's just accepting that it's coming, it's going to be there, and oh, there it is, and it's okay, it's fine, because I'm going to get through this, and it's perfectly fine. And I think what's lovely about what you just said is absolutely it will resonate with others, and that gives others reassurance that it's okay to show up authentically, it's okay to remove the mask. And just because your job title is X, or just because your role is X, or just because you're in the public eye, doesn't mean you're not vulnerable. It doesn't mean you don't have feelings. And I think you're effectively giving others permission, right, to show up as they're supposed to. And I think that's beautiful. That's how the world should be. And, you know, long may that continue. I think that's important.
No, for sure, for sure.
So final question to you. You've talked about sort of your journey and sort of touched on your upbringing and the wonderful work that you do with your organisation. If you were to, I guess, leave with sort of final thoughts or that kind of nugget of inspiration, or just something to say for sort of listeners that maybe they've listened today and a lot of what you've said has resonated, be it the discrimination element, be it your upbringing, be it the work that you're doing with the community, your divorce, whatever that may be, if you were to leave with sort of some parting words for the listeners, what would you say they would be?
Let me see if I can do 3 things. I think the first, I'll say that it's still a cruel world. And actually things happen to us that are unfair. And actually, if we look at things from that perspective, it can leave us quite embittered. Like, we can be bitter about it.
Yeah.
And everything that's happening to you, that's making you feel that this is unfair, you're valid for that, to feel that way. But the one thing that I will say, that don't ever see yourself as a victim. Even though I can look at it and go like, oh, you're a victim of this circumstance. But try to never see yourself as a victim. The reason why I say that is that once you start to do that and internalize that, it makes it very difficult for you to know what you can do, but from what you cannot do. Because I think, from my perspective, once you internalize yourself as a victim, that doesn't mean that the things that has happened to you didn't exist, because that, you know, you'll be divorcing yourself from the truth. But I think if you were to say that I have an inherent capability, even though you don't know it yet, but so long as you're breathing, you can rise above it. I think what it does is it allows you, and if you start to show up, no matter how big that challenge is, and chip it away, right? It allows you to know that over time, that actually, I can do this, or I've done this. And I wouldn't have been able to know that I'll be able to do it if I didn't try it. But if you hold yourself within that I'm a victim space, it allows you to give more power to the problem and more power to people, and which takes away power from yourself. But you are a powerful individual, and it's recognizing that. I think the second thing, if it's not too long, will probably be that, and maybe I'll end with that, is to spend time with yourself and say, be clear, what is it that I want for my life? What is it that I want for myself, for my family, for my aspiration or future? You know, try and really take time to crystallize that. You know, the world doesn't leave us enough space, because it's always filling our heads with something. But I would say try and get clear with that. Get support for that if you need be, and use that as a drive. And the thing that I would say is, like, try and go confidently in that direction, knowing that as you move towards that, the world around you simplifies one way or the other in a very strange way, and you're able to rise above or realize your potential in a way that you would have never ever thought that you'll be able to. So maybe those are the 2 things that I'll probably leave people with.
Said beautifully, as expected. So yeah, thank you for joining today. You are a truly inspirational human being.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate you being here today, and I'm confident that what you've talked about today will resonate with so many people. So yeah, I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much,
Thank
Poku.
you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.